Hello everyone. We had a little technical difficulty. Let me see if I got it to work. Bear with me. Like I was asking before, what are you all reading? Drop it in the comments below. Happy Saturday. Let's see. Let's see. Hello.
Hi there.
Hi. How are you?
Well, glad to be here finally. A little bit of a tech glitch there, huh?
Yeah, it happens. It's okay. They don't really say like I when I first tried to do live, I tried to join from my computer and I didn't realize that it wasn't a thing. I was like, why can't we make that a thing? So, I'm excited to talk to you. I loved this book. I listened to it as an audiobook and it was very, very good. I have not been in the world of historical romances lately, and it made me want to go back to it. So now I want to go and binge read all of the books in a row. So I'm very excited to be here. So, can you tell the ones out there that maybe have not heard of your stories a little bit about your characters and the books?
Sure. I started off writing Regency romance maybe 15 years ago, and I came across several authors like C.S. Harris, Joanna Bourne, who had a really strong element of either suspense or, in C.S. Harris's case, she abandoned romance and switched over to historical mystery with a strong romantic element. And I can't put her books down. There will be another one out in a couple weeks, and I wait all year for her April release. That's C.S. Harris, and her protagonist, Sebastian St. Cyr, has a genetic anomaly. Um, the author, C.S. Harris, was aware from the time her daughter was a little tiny kid that this child had phenomenal hearing. You know, mom and dad can be on one side of the house discussing Christmas presents, and the kid yells to them, "I can hear you." And she could hear every word. This child grew up, went to college, and started taking some genetics classes. And as part of their class, they tested themselves for weird little genetic conditions. And it
Mhm.
turned out there is a mutation which is commonly associated with yellow eyes, phenomenal hearing, and an uncanny ability to see in the dark. And C.S. Harris got the idea, what if my sleuth, what if I wrote a sleuth who had all those capabilities? And the result is just a wonderful piece of series, the Sebastian St. Cyr series. And I got to thinking, could I do a Regency mystery series? And I started out with a sleuth in the Lady Violet series, who was widowed, because widows in Regency society were about the most empowered women.
Mhm.
And that went well. I mean, I wrote 8 books, and she got a happily ever after in book 8. And then I thought, well, but male protagonists seem to do better.
Mhm.
And of course, the um, Napoleonic Wars were going on. There was a host of hardships and traumas, because, of course, your sleuth has to be wounded somehow. And at the same time, my I'm thinking, what hasn't been done? We've done um, here sleuths that are recovering alcoholics, that are colorblind, that are dyslexic, that are ASD. What hasn't been done? And I thought of my dear old dad, who had a condition called transient global amnesia. And this is a situation where you're humming along in the middle of your day and you just forget everything. You forget your name. You forget what day it is. You don't know what country you're in. You can still like button your clothes and you can still
Mhm.
speak English and know that it's English, but all of your personal data is gone. And it may come back 20 minutes later, 2 hours later, or 2 days later. Um, that is the transient nature. Um, and I just thought, well, this is a pretty strange condition. What if you inflicted it on somebody whose whole shtick is how observant he is, how he can connect distant dots? That would be pretty inconvenient. I think I'm
Yeah.
going to do it. Um, and I don't think I'm letting any cats out of the bag in that this has happened to me as well. Um, the when you have a memory lapse like this, it's the same thing as a word is on the tip of your tongue, but you can't find it, except
Hmm.
your whole existence is on the tip of your tongue and you can't find it. You don't even, trying to think. Nope, you don't know your age.
Yeah.
Um, and so it was fun to A, can I do a Regency mystery series, and B, I'm going to do this transient global amnesia thing to poor old Lord Julian, and we're going to see what happens. And as it turns out, sometimes it's a wonderful thing that he forgets everything because he also forgets his preconceived notions and his prejudices and everything that he thought he knew growing up. But sometimes you still see with the eyes of childhood when in
Hmm.
fact, your favorite uncle really is pretty obnoxious. Um, and so, as a sleuth, for him, it has been a backhanded sort of gift. And it doesn't happen to him in every book, but it haunts him. At any point, he is very vulnerable because he knows this has been happening since he went to university. It hasn't gone away, it's been 10 years.
Hmm.
So, in some senses, he's living dangerously. At any point, somebody could come upon him in the midst of one of these uh, lapses and lock him away in an asylum.
Yeah.
So, uh, on the one hand, he has this problem. On the other hand, his brother is a duke. So he is way up there on the privilege scale. Um, and yet he is also a failure as an officer because he was taken captive by the French. And supposedly, when you're on reconnaissance, you're supposed to be smarter than that. And he was a reconnaissance officer. So he has all of these, he has this big mixed bag of gifts and privileges and baggage and wounds. And he's just been great fun to work with.
Yeah. Yeah. I really liked him as a character because like a lot of the book has these themes of like, your dignity, your resilience, your identity, and how like all of those weave together. And it's like his whole perception of his like worth or value are tied into those things that he feels like he's lacking in.
Yeah, he's very aware that he has dropped some important balls in life. He also looks funny. His hair turned white when he was taken captive by the French, and they did not treat him well. And his eyes are sensitive to light, so he wears blue spectacles when there's bright sun. So he doesn't look the part of a competent, lordly, sort of top of his game guy. And the ghost in the book, the past that haunts him, is that his brother was also a reconnaissance officer, his older brother.
Hmm.
And his older brother was acting strange, and Julian followed him out of camp, and the older brother was taken prisoner. And Julian figured, well, I'll get taken prisoner too, and maybe both of us can escape more easily than either one of us. And he doesn't know what happened to his brother.
Yeah.
And you find out book by book by book that this brother really, was another mixed bag. In some ways, he was a great friend. In other ways, he was an utter scoundrel. And Julian misses him, but he's angry at him, and he can't get closure. And so this is like life. Um, you don't get every relationship wrapped up in a tidy little package.
Hmm.
Um, there are people who ghost you and people you ghost, and um, we struggle on as best we can. And where Julian has sort of found a coping mechanism is if he can solve other people's problems, their um, missing children, their who's stealing from me, these are not murder mysteries, or at least I haven't had to write a murder mystery yet.
Hmm.
Um, then he feels like in some ways he's atoning for all of his shortcomings.
Yeah.
So, this is just, he's a marvelous character. He grows, he backslides, he has a little supporting cast. There is not an arch villain. The arch villain is sort of all of Julian's baggage.
Hmm.
I may develop an arch villain, but so far, 12 books in, there are no candidates.
Yeah.
Unless maybe it's his dead brother or his
Maybe.
brother who was taken captive.
Yeah. AZ Luminosity said Julian is such a well-written character and well-formed that I feel I know him and I can hear his voice in my head as I read. Yes, I totally agree with that. He was so deep and complex, and you feel, I mean, at least for me, I felt such a pull to him. Like, I just wanted to give him a hug. And I also wanted to slap him and be like, let her in, let them in, like, give them all a chance. Like, they are seeing you differently than you're seeing yourself. So it was like this back and forth in my mind of like, oh, I love you. And oh, I want to just shake you because of all the struggles he goes through, which I feel like all of us in life kind of do that too. Like, we're our own worst critics.
Yes, and our own worst enemies, and the with a romance, it's a pretty complicated book from the sense that if you have two protagonists, they each have to have a character arc. They each have to grow and change, and the relationship has to grow and change. So they're different people at the end of the book. Well, when you write the same character 12, 15, 30 books, he too and the people around him must be different at the end of the book than they were at the beginning of the book, and they have to be different in a good way. They have to have
Mhm.
learned something. They have to have overcome a fear. They have to have put aside a prejudice, admitted they were wrong. And Julian has just ever so much work to do in that
Yeah.
regard. So he's fun to work with.
Yeah. And when you were writing, how did you know, go through, because there's, and I mean, I haven't gotten through, I got through the first book and I'm going to be reading the next one. So I will probably see more of the romance, hopefully, as it goes through. But how do you go about balancing, all the different facets of him and leading him through that story?
Well, that's where the simplicity of a mystery plot helps, because there's one fundamental question that you agree with the reader, you're going to answer by the end of the book, and that is, who did it?
Hmm.
So there can be red herrings and lying witnesses and imperfect recollections. There are a lot of ways that you can throw sand in the gears, but the actual dramatic plot is pretty simple. So there's a lot of room in there for character arc and relationship arcs. And so I'm finding it just a nice change from the complexity of romance. I still get to do all my character driven stuff,
Hmm.
but I can wrap it around, the single maypole of who did it, or sometimes it's who did it and why did they do it.
Yeah. And I think even with the story, even though that it's set, in a historical setting and the way that they talk and, the pomp and circumstances that they do in each scene, with the dinner parties and the social soirees and all of that, that's not necessarily stuff we do in this modern time, but the overall themes and the relationships and the dynamics of people, it can translate, and it can also, as far as like the reader, if there's some area of your life where you're having, a similar struggle, you can relate and feel that like camaraderie with the character.
Well, the more I write in the Regency, the more it's like, wow, we're back to the future, in that it was a time of tremendous wealth inequality. It was a time when women were losing rights, and that got worse before it got better. It was a time when there were uh, English medicine was so terribly backward compared to what was available on the continent or in Scotland. There's a lot of quackery, a lot of hucksterism. There was very little regulation. You could adulterate bread with lead, and everybody knew it was a bad idea, but it was cheaper than refined flour. Um, so, uh, in a lot of ways, it mirrors what's going on today. The government was trying to manipulate media. They suspended habeas corpus for 2 years. They were murdering their own citizens and calling them rioters when, how does a 3-month-old child riot? Explain that to
Yeah.
me. Um, it's like, wow, they were dealing with an awful lot of the same issues we deal with. And they
Hmm.
were dealing with them very well. It was a very messy time. And what complicates it is the Victorians came afterward and they wanted everybody to think well of their parents and grandparents. So they started erasing parts of rewriting history,
Hmm.
because they didn't want anybody. William Wordsworth, for example, was the poet laureate of England. Well, when he was a young man, he popped over to revolutionary France. He fell in love. He had an illegitimate daughter. No big deal. It happened. He went to see her as soon as he could, and her legitimate half sister spent most of her life trying to eliminate any record of the fact that this um, French daughter ever existed.
Wow.
So our sense of the Regency period, the sort of Jane Austen Netherfield ball, is very sanitized compared to what was really going on.
Yeah. Yeah. There was a lot of political and a lot of, kind of how he got like the short end of the stick. Everybody assumed the worst of him because of him just trying to help this brother that he thought was one way and he wasn't, and he was living by his honor and his code, and he wasn't going to let, even though he was traumatized by a lot of things, any slander against a lady being talked about in public society. Like, he was stood on his morals even if everybody was like wanting to hang him by the noose. Like, he didn't care.
Well, that's another way that Regency society was in transition from what is called an honor society to a dignity society. If you are like the Old West or the Scottish borders in an honor society, your word is your bond. There is no insult that is too small to be avenged, because if you
Hmm.
let people get away with little insults, next thing they're going to be stealing your cattle.
Yeah.
Um, Versus a dignity society where you ignore the little insults and you trust to the courts and due process and public
Hmm.
opinion and journalism and the church and all of these major institutions to sort of manage justice. You don't take the law into your own hands. And that's either theory will work, but we have to all agree which one we're going with. And of course, it's never a pure question. So Julian has been a soldier and a spy, where it's very much been a matter of, if he doesn't look after himself, nobody will. And now he's trying to integrate back into a society which is supposedly very civilized, and it's a rough transition.
Yeah.
He is judged, he is treated unfairly, and yet he also gets surprised by who cuts him a break.
Hmm.
Some of the old soldiers that he would expect to be um, most judgmental toward him are the most understanding.
Yeah. Probably. Well, yeah, because they've been through it. They probably realize that what people are hearing is not necessarily what was really happening. And I thought it was interesting, without giving spoilers away, some of the mysteries in this book. The audacity of some of the side characters and their like musings of what they say is happening and who did it and like why you shouldn't be worrying about it or let it go, and just all of the crazy ways that they like try to justify and like kind of undermine him in a way. But he takes it with even like his internal dialogue, maybe not so much, but like his external like way that he accepts it and just lets it kind of like go, and he like molds over whatever his comeback responses are. They're so funny. And then the side characters that support him, their comebacks to his like defense are so good. I wrote it in my review of the book, but I love how, and I'm going to butcher it, but she's like, he loses his memory, but once you're like your respect or your dignity is lost, you're never getting that back. Like I loved that line. I thought that was so good.
Yeah. Well, I particularly like using child supporting characters and secondary characters because, first of all, kids can get away with saying things and seeing things. Also, those of us with less power are vigilant watching those with more power. We have to be, or they'll squash us.
Hmm.
So kids tend to really keep an eye on grown-ups, just like um, women tend to keep a very close eye on men. Whereas if you ask men, how does she go through the grocery store? Your husband often won't be able to tell anybody whether you start with produce or canned goods, but you know exactly how he does the pattern. Um, it's just a matter of when there's a power imbalance, the underdog is always more vigilant about the overdog. So
Hmm.
children are often much better at keeping an eye on adults than adults are at keeping an eye on the children who are casually around them. And that's, if Julian is trying to solve problems through observation, a kid is a very observant sidekick. A
Hmm.
kid is also a mini me. You look at little people and you think, this person, who only comes up to my waist is 4 years old. And that's how old I was when I had to start wearing glasses and I got funny names. And she's hardly a toddler. She shouldn't have to be dealing with mean nicknames. And when you are confronted with the actual child, you can have more insight into you and how you
Hmm.
got the way you are. And maybe you should cut yourself some slack. And no amount of adult lecturing is going to get you to the same place. And the same way with old people. Julian's godmother is getting shading toward crotchety, but she can say things to him nobody else can say. And he has to just take it because he knows she loves him and he respects her.
Yeah. Yeah. And I liked how you had in this story, there's a couple of mysteries that he's simultaneously trying to solve, and they kind of all correlate to each other. Also, whilst he's in this like visceral internal battle with himself because he's like, I just want to leave, but I can't because I'm bound by this sense of duty and honor to, help my friend, but I want to leave. Like, how was that writing that like dichotomy with his inner dialogue versus him wanting to do what was right?
Well, every book must have a black moment. I mean, almost every book, I think. Every genre fiction requires there to be a moment of despair when all hope is lost. All the growth and change that your character has struggled through for 300 pages, it's all for nothing. And it's worse than for nothing because, you suffered to get where you are and you still can't save the day or save the cat or find the missing heiress or whatever it is. And so, for Julian to be tempted, not in every book, but in many books, to just pack it in, admit defeat, let the enemy take you captive again, and give in to despair is a struggle he's got to get through. And sometimes what happens is it's the other people around him saying, give up, go home, or it's the person who asked for help in the first place saying, I changed my mind. I don't want to know the truth. You're making this far too difficult. Go away.
Mm-hmm.
And and then Julian is faced with, if I solve this mystery, not only will I piss everybody off, but they'll be in a worse situation than if I had never gotten involved in the first place. What do I do?
Yeah.
And the answer so far has been he must champion the truth. He knows what it's like with respect to his brother for there to be an unsolved mystery. And it's not making him a better person to have no idea where his brother is buried. What became of his brother? Why was his brother out running around after dark when there were French patrols in the bushes?
Mm-hmm.
All of this just eats at him. So, he is gradually reclaiming truth, sometimes reluctantly and sometimes against a lot of resistance. But that's just the path that he has to walk.
Yeah. Yeah. So, which character kind of surprised you the most? when you were writing this story?
That's an interesting question. Um, Hyperia.
Yeah.
Um, it is a spoiler, but I hope readers will understand. This book presents it that Lady Ophelia, Julian's godmother, sort of pounced on him. He's having just the best time, being terribly depressed and contemplating self harm, and he opens the book in a very low place. And his godmother barges in on his gloom and says, I need an escort out to the house party, and you're my godson. You better clean yourself up because we're leaving on Thursday. And he can't say no to her. And I think a part of him understands that if he says no to her, there might not be another chance,
Mm-hmm.
that he is in a dangerously bad place. So he, scrubs up and mounts up and gets her to the house party. And when he gets there, he finds that a woman with whom he was friends before the war, her name is Hyperia West, is a guest at the house party. And they had one of those semi sort of everybody expected them to get married situations, but Julian never proposed. He never gave her the don't wait for me speech. There was no understanding. He just kind of like, see ya. And we find out that it is Hyperia who put Godmother up to dragging him out to the. We find out several books on that Hyperia was the one who she'd been sort of keeping tabs on him through the gossip vine, and she had a pretty good sense of how far down he was going.
Mm-hmm.
And this was her way of throwing him a lifeline. And once he gets there and he's kind of like, all right, see ya, I'm done. I got you to the gates. It's Hyperia who tramps on his tail and says, wait a minute, buddy. There was gossip about us. You did not propose to me. Everybody thought we were getting married. And now if you run off, I'm going to look pretty stupid. We need to, make nice here and pretend we're cool. Okay. And Julian does care for Hyperia, and he is increasingly sort of aware of he wasn't a cad, but he was certainly clueless
Mm-hmm.
toward her. And so he stays because she has asked it of him. And um, she has, Hyperia has been loyal to him, and she remains loyal to him. And eventually they do get engaged, but at this point, Julian doesn't know that it's Hyperia who has arranged for him to attend this house party. The reader doesn't know either.
Yeah.
We think it's Lady Ophelia, who certainly, read her part convincingly.
Mm-hmm.
But there are people pulling for Julian, and he doesn't even know it. And it was that I didn't know at the time that it was Hyperia who arranged for him to go. I found that out as I was writing subsequent books. So I
Yeah.
have to say it's Hyperia, the fiance, the love interest, and she's also his conscience. When, some of those times when he's getting ready to quit, when he's just been insulted one too many times, she's the one who says, "You won't like it if you give up and go home now. You'll
Yeah.
be miserable. You think you were miserable before. Well, now you have a chance to make a difference here, and you're going to let public opinion talk you out of it? My dude, no." And he'll listen to her. She's not beautiful. She's not wealthy. She's not anything that is impressive at first glance. But she is the absolute ballast that he needs. And finally, he is mature enough to see that.
Yeah. Yeah. I really liked her character. She's got a lot of gumption and she's, a very strong personality, but she does it in a demure way. Like you don't see her, at least in the first book. It might get different as you go along, but in the first book, she does it in a way that you don't realize she's doing it, but she's maneuvering the chess pieces around and she's very intentional in the way she does it, but the way she shows it, you think that you're not quite sure. You're like, did she mean to do that? Did she do that? And then it comes out later. Like I don't want to give spoilers, but I really liked her character. She was really, really, really a very good balance to him.
Yes, and he comes to realize that everything he does in life, everything he loves, everything that he does well, he does better when Hyperia is involved, and it becomes more and more our investigations and not his investigations. And this is, of course, a metaphor for him healing and letting in light and love and joy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I liked that. So I thought we could do a little game, Regency edition. I normally do a would you rather, but I thought of some questions that have to do with the Regency time and see what your picks would be. I thought it would be fun. So would you rather lose your fortune or lose your reputation?
Fortune,
Fortune. Okay. Me too. Would you rather marry for love or marry for social standing and security?
love,
Love, good. Would you rather be misunderstood or underestimated?
underestimated.
Would you rather rebuild your life alone or depend on someone else you don't necessarily trust?
Oh, rebuild my life alone. Thanks.
I like that. Those are good. And then who would you want to go on a carriage ride with? If you had to pick any of your characters and you say, I want to go around on the promenade or go on a carriage ride with them, who would it be?
Well, Julian is the obvious pick, but I get to write books with him all the time. Um, I think in the first book, I'm not sure. Somewhere along the way in this series, the Duke of Wellington um, has a few words with Julian because Julian is regarded as a traitor because he's taken captive, his brother's taken captive, but only Julian survives. And the assumption is that Julian traded secrets for his life. And it's the Duke of Wellington who kind of quashes those rumors. And I think I would like a carriage ride with His Grace of Wellington.
Okay. And then would you rather go to a Regency ball or a quaint dinner party?
Well, they serve some weird stuff at those quaint dinner parties, eel pie. Um, I would like to see a Regency ball.
Regency ball. Okay.
Yeah.
And within this story, what was the harder type scenes for you to write?
The bad guy, because he truly is a scurrilous fellow. He's
Mhm.
preying on old women. And, it's, they tell you that the bad guy should be a version of what the hero could become if the hero doesn't choose courage and honor.
Mhm.
And okay, but the other thing is the bad guy has to be convincingly a hero in his own mind. He has to think, I am entitled to behave like this, and society doesn't understand me, and um, I am doing my best, and where's the applause? And some bad guys in a romance context, you have such sympathy for, and you can see so clearly why they're stumbling down the wrong path that 3 books later you make them the hero. But in a mystery setting, I think it is more common that your bad guy is bad. May not be a guy. Um, not just misguided, not just handed low cards and doing the best they can. They truly are dangerous. And to make a character who is really dealing from an evil place credible without turning him into mustache twirling caricature is
Yeah.
difficult. It
Yeah.
takes subtlety, and I'm still working on it.
Well, I thought it was good. I'm not giving any spoilers, but the bad guy in this book I thought was very good. And the twists that you do with the plot twists of the ending of this book, you you can see where in his delusional mind he was doing the things that were best, but you could also see like, wow, you are very crazy. And then a third layer, you could totally see that same story, like you were saying, it mirrors life now. See that happen someone around you and you wouldn't even know it. So I really liked how you set that up.
Well, good. It's hard, isn't it? I mean, it's hard with mysteries that you really can't go into the plot too much, or you do start giving things away.
Yeah. But I thought you did an exceptional job. Like, seriously, you guys need to read this book. And okay, let's talk about the audio. So this book was published and it's recently been done in audio format, and that's how I listened to it. I loved it. How was that process?
Well, I think I published it in audio, and I used the narrator who had worked with all of my Regency romances, James Langton, and he is phenomenal. James actually grew up in Yorkshire, England. He was educated in Scotland. He is a musician, and his ability to read, he finds things in my stories that I didn't know were there. You know, a twist on a word, a sadness in a question, a little irony that didn't necessarily come to me as I was writing it, but it's better than what I wrote.
Yeah.
Um, so I just delight in his professional delivery. I was lucky enough to get him, and I think we're up to books 9 or possibly 10 are done in audio,
Hmm.
and
That's
you can get them
amazing.
on the website.
I'm totally, I'm slowly getting, each month buying my like list of audiobooks, and I cannot wait to listen to them all. I thought, like you were saying, how he takes the word. So one of the sections that I like dog tagged when I was listening to it, I can't remember where. I think it's towards the beginning, maybe middle. But the way he says, she is everything that is lovely. Like, that was like a plethora of other meanings and other words in that small sentence, the way he said that. And it just stuck with me that I just loved his delivery and how he brings him to life, and even the other characters, because he puts different tones and different ways of saying words when he's bringing all the other characters to life, that you can see it kind of playing out in a movie, and everybody has their own personality, even though he is the only narrator narrating the whole thing.
Yeah, he is very talented, and he just has a beautiful voice,
Hmm. Yes, he does. He
especially
does.
for Lord Julian. I mean, yeah, he nails it.
Yeah, he definitely does. So, were there any scenes that you really, or what types of scenes, so we don't give anything away, that you really enjoyed writing when you were writing them? They were like, this is fun.
When Julian is interacting with Atticus, the little boy who is sort of his boot boy and turns out to be his eyes and ears below stairs, Atticus is uh, peppery, he's irreverent, he's kind, he's vulnerable and he doesn't know it.
Hmm.
Um, and, Julian can't just be a, a snippy, snooty former officer, courtesy lord. He has to be a human being with this kid.
Yeah.
And I just the way Atticus deflates him and goes through all of his coping mechanisms, um, and sort of sees the truth. And Atticus at one point saves the day. And Julian wasn't expecting that. He wasn't expecting that this little uppity person would actually be an ally with some power.
Hmm. Yeah, I
So
love when
that's
there's
what I
kids
did.
in books,
Yeah.
because they're so unabashedly themselves. They're not usually ego driven, and they say whatever comes out of their mouth. They're not censored. They haven't been jaded yet to be censored.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. So, did any of the characters, when you were writing them, especially with writing like a male character, because I know for me, a lot of the time, the books that I've come into contact with, it's usually there might be a dual point of view with a male and a female, but generally it's a female driven book. And so how is it to write the vulnerability from a male, and then added in the fact that it's a historical one, which in that time, they were way more of, you're the strong, silent, like no emotion. How was that?
Well, it's a challenge. I have 4 brothers, uh, so I'm not unexposed to the male point of view. Um, but first person is, and this book is written in Julian's point of view, the whole book,
Mhm.
the whole series so far. Uh, for mystery, that's a way to keep things away from the sleuth. You know, they only know what they know. And so
Mhm.
we don't hop into the head of the Duchess or the villain or the witness. And so the reader usually only knows what the sleuth knows. And you can follow one breadcrumb trail to the truth, as opposed to the other approaches, which are multiple point of view, you know, third person point of view, alternating first person point of view, where it might be Julian gets a scene, Hyperia gets a scene, Julian, Hyperia, or occasionally Julian's mom, the Duchess, might pipe up. Um, that you can alternate points of view for variety to go more deeply into more than one character, but for keeping the dramatic arc, the mystery, actually a mystery, one point of view seems to work best for me.
Mhm.
Um, in the Lady Violet series, I had to go to alternating points of view because the story kind of took me that direction. It had been a love triangle, but it resolved. And readers weren't too happy about that. I got some, well, I understand why you did it, but it's not my favorite feedback.
Mhm.
So for Julian, I've stuck with one point of view and I've gotten to know him better. And I've gotten, I think, a little more comfortable with wink, wink at the reader, where Julian will say something and the reader and I know you're going to regret that. You're going to regret that so hard. And it's going to be, you know, be somewhere in the next 50 pages, you're going to wish you hadn't said that. Um, but that takes knowing the character and the plot and sort of uh, being able to signal to the reader, we're going to set him up here. You want to just watch this, stick a pin in it, and it's fun. I
Yeah,
hope it's fun for the readers.
yeah, it is. It is. You can definitely. I can see where you're saying that, where you put stuff in there, and I later on I was like, oh, that's gonna be bad. Don't say that, or don't do that, or the
Yeah,
different things. So, when you're writing
remember
these series, all of your books that are based in a historical setting, how much research went into that to portray it?
the research has been constant in the sense that uh, you I have fallen in love with the time period because it is so reflective of modern times. And yet it's not that long ago. We have photographs of the Duke of Wellington, in
Hmm.
part because he lived into his 80s and the technology became available toward the end of his life. But it shouldn't be. He should forever be that oil portrait of the guy with the big nose and his bright red jacket. Um, so you begin reading in the period, then you start researching original sources in the period, and fortunately, we still have the London Times from 1804. We have tons of diaries and journals. We have wanted ads, I mean, personal ads. Um, you know, bereaved widower with 18 children looking for young wife. Um, I don't think so, Mister. Um, so it's possible to do to do endless original source research, but then people write such great books, autobiographies and biographies, and um, there's so much military history. By 1815, by Waterloo, Britain had been at war for 100 years, and this was like the third time they'd been at war for 100 years. That does
Hmm.
things to a culture, to an economy, but it also creates an awful lot of documentation.
Hmm.
And Yeah, it's just been it's not a hard period to research.
Yeah, no, I love all that. I love that period of time, and even further back into like the Tudor time, like all of that is so fascinating to me because it had such rich culture and unique things that was like the way they did things, and you're like, but why? Like it didn't make
Yeah.
sense, but to them it was everything.
Yes, or it was just Yes, you strapped babies to boards and you hung them on the wall for hours at a time.
Yeah.
And so what if they became catatonic? They're quieter that way. It's like,
Yeah.
no,
It's just
infant
crazy.
mortality is a bad thing. But they didn't connect the
Exactly.
dots.
Yeah, exactly. So it's definitely it was a very interesting time, and it's fun to see, you know, coming up with a character that's like a modge podge of all the different, personalities and the ways things were, and see them on a page and see how they think and solve mysteries, because I love mysteries. My mom she raised me on, Sherlock Holmes and Miss Marple and Hercule Poirot and all of those detectives I've grown up with. And I love any kind of mystery because I just want to know, like, I want to solve it. So I'm constantly like putting
Yeah.
my detective skills at use, and it just invigorates the mind. And that's what I love about mysteries.
Well, check out C.S. Harris, the Sebastian St. Cyr series. I
Okay.
think she's up around 20 some books now, and every one it's like, she's not gonna, she would never, don't do it, don't do it. She does it, she pulls it off. It is just a phenomenal series. And
Yeah.
it's, she breaks rules and succeeds. You know, the books are all successful books, successful as mysteries, and they're just ripping good reads and full of history. And I'm just there. There's so many good books out there, and hers would be at the top of my historical mystery list.
Oh, I love that. So I thought we could do another quick little game, and then I have like two or three questions to wrap up. But I thought we could do as you speaking as the voice of your character. So, what would be your greatest fear if you were answering as his voice?
I wouldn't care to be in captivity again.
Okay. And then what do you regret most?
One doesn't air one's linen in public.
Okay. And then what do you truly want but won't admit?
My brother, hale and whole.
I like that. I like that. So, in your opinion, as a reader and an author, what makes a great story?
Characters that just draw the reader in. If you're rooting for that character on page one, it's going to be a good book. Or it
Mhm.
has a much greater chance of being a good book than if you're kind of paging through, like, when do we get, like, off the tarmac here? When do we get airborne? If that character has you turning from page one to page two, ripping fast, and page three to page four even faster, um, that's an encouraging sign.
Yeah,
It's got to be the character that gets you rooting for him.
yeah. And then if you could go in a time machine and travel back in time to your younger writing self, what would you tell yourself knowing what you know now and all of the amazing things that you've learned?
Man, I have done whole keynote speeches on this, what I wish I'd known then. Um, and I think the most important guidance that I came across was Stephen King. And it might even be in his book on writing, where he says, do it for joy. If you can do it for joy, you can do it forever.
I like that.
As opposed to, I want reviews, or I want a movie deal, or I want money, I want to pay off my house. Well, we all want those things. But if you let the, comparison is the thief of joy, if you're too busy comparing yourself to the outliers and the exceptions and um, the people who have had better luck than you, and there are a lot of them, um, then you're not going you're going to lose the joy of creating a beautiful scene and coming up with clever characters and a plot twist that nobody's done before. And this is magic. Why would you let anyone steal your magic?
Yeah, I love that. So if you were back in time and your younger self is seeing you as you are now, what do you think they'd think or say about you?
Well, being younger and not quite as uh, beat up, they'd probably tell me, "Don't worry, it's going to be okay. Just write the books." And, and I would probably not listen.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like that. I feel like if we all had the opportunity to go talk to our younger selves, the younger self would either say that you're lying, that never really happened, you didn't do all that stuff, or they would say there's no way I could actually do that stuff. It'd be one of the two. So,
Well, I think my younger self would have expected me by this age, well qualified for Social Security, to stop fretting, stop
mhm.
being worried that I'll never write another scene, or my readers are all going to disappear overnight, or, that I awfulize. And again, that doesn't help you write a brilliant book. It
Yeah,
just, you know, distracts you from what you're on this earth to do, which is have fun writing stories so that other people can enjoy them.
yeah, exactly. So, what has been the most profound or surprising thing you've learned on your writing journey?
That love really matters. It's not just words. That my readers, I think, are some of the nicest, kindest, wisest people. They send me letters that just make me cry. Um, and that most authors are readers before they're writers, and we're reading often voraciously as a coping mechanism. And so many authors helped me deal with being a single mom, a single working mom, and a child welfare attorney. Do not be a child welfare attorney. It is a hard gig. Um, and because many other people cared enough to do the work to put their stories into books, and I could get a hold of those books, and at the end of my day I could read 3 chapters and be fortified by those happily ever afters, or those justices will triumph, or those um, you too can save the world if you'll just believe in yourself. All of genre fiction is full of good nourishment for
Yes.
the human spirit. And I owe so much to the people who just wrote stories. It in a way that is just as important as paying the bills. It kept my emotional lights on to be able to read stories. And if I can stay tapped into that side of being an author, I'm good for a long time.
Yeah, I love that. That is so well said. I feel that in my soul. Like books are an escape and they're a way to work through things that maybe is too close. So you do it in a different setting, in a different era, in a different world, and it's not so difficult to do. And I love that. That was so well said. So, is there anything you can share? What's next and coming for you that we can look forward to?
Well, Julian has book number 12 coming out in May. And of course, I'm going to blank on the name. A gentleman, they're all gentleman books, and it's like, and I don't refer to them. A Gentleman of Modest Ambitions
Okay.
is his next story. And of course, the titles always reflect a little bit on Julian and a little bit on either the antagonist or the person who comes to Julian with a problem. And it can be ironic in one sense, or prescriptive in another sense, but it is it's another one of those stories where Julian has to figure out who he's going to trust, if anybody. And his memory, he feels, is getting worse, and he doesn't think he should keep solving mysteries, as long as his memory is so dodgy. And
Mhm.
he's got to work that through, not just to solve this mystery, but to solve who he's going to be in this life.
Yeah.
Is he going to be a sleuth, or is he just going to be an ornament? And of course, Hyperia gets to chime in on that, and as usual, she straightens him out.
I like that. I like that. I'm excited to see that. Like I said, I am deep diving into the series and I am so excited for it. It was such a well written book and the characters are so endearing and funny, and even though it's a mystery, there's so much more layers to it and it's very entertaining and it'll have you laughing, it'll have you pondering things, you trying to figure out what's going on. So it was a very good book and I'm excited that I got to listen to it and talk to you. Like this has been great. You've said so many profound things that I just love listening to you talk about your book and your backstory, and so thank you for that. I appreciate you
Well,
coming on.
thank you. I love to talk about books, and I love to talk with people who love to talk about books. So for me, it's double fun.
I love that. Well, my last question to leave you with and everybody out there, in for you as your message to your readers, what messages do you want them to walk away with after finishing your books?
Believe in yourself. Um, this is the fundamental message of genre fiction, whether it is um, have the courage to love and be transformed by love, and you will have the best possible life. That's what romance tells us. Or mystery tells us if you will rely on the skills you have and be persistent and honorable, you can be the defender of truth. YA tells us that even when young adult, even when we think we are at our messiest and most vulnerable, if we'll find good friends and believe in ourselves, we can emerge, like the butterfly um, from the cocoon. And that's similar to what women's fiction tells us. So all of genre fiction is about, belonging to the consumerism and the racism and nationalism and sexism and all those things that try to hollow us out and fill us with hate. You start by loving you and believing in you. And this uh, will result in the world being a better place, better people in your life, you becoming a better person. Just believe in yourself.
Yeah, that's a good message. And I feel that. I feel like with Julian, that's his constant battle and struggle, but he works towards it every day.
Yes, and he realizes that he has a choice. Um, he's lucky. He's got a rooting section. A lot of us don't.
Yeah.
And I hope in fiction we can find some fortification and some reassurance, because we're all worth rooting for.
Yeah. I love that. Well, thank you so much for this, and thank you for sharing your stories with us and writing them and taking the time to bring us these amazing characters and these amazing stories.
It is my profound pleasure. And thank you for having me on your live chat.
I loved it. Well, I will definitely be in touch with you as I finish each book. I'll send you my little thoughts on it because I'm in love with the world and the characters. I'm so excited to go further into it.
Thanks.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye bye.